Hello everyone, my name is David. Today we are going to take a look at another real story with you. Today it's the story of an investigation that the police completely messed up. A man who was sentenced to death not once, but twice by two different courts of India. When the case finally reached the Supreme Court, it dragged on for nearly 6 years. And after those 6 years of hearings, the Supreme Court noticed just 4 critical points, 4 small details that completely overturned the entire case. This was a man who had already spent 12 years behind bars, a man accused not of 1 or 2 but 6 brutal murders, and these 6 killings weren't of strangers. They were of his own family, his real brother, his sister-in-law, and their 4 innocent children. The first time he was handed the death sentence, he was immediately separated from ordinary prisoners and locked away in an isolated cell. Before that, he used to work inside the jail, sweeping floors, and as a gardener doing odd jobs. But after the death penalty, even that small routine was taken away from him. Imagine this, a man living for over a decade in a dark corner of prison, waiting each day for the sound of footsteps that might bring his final call, a man branded as a killer of his own blood. And yet, after years of hopelessness, one twist in the courtroom turned his entire fate upside down. The reason behind this was that as soon as someone is given the death penalty, such a prisoner is immediately placed in a completely separate cell from the others. The idea is to make sure that he doesn't mentally break down, harm himself, or hurt another inmate. And since he is a death row convict, unlike the others serving regular prison terms, he is not assigned any work inside the jail. Work would require sitting and interacting with other prisoners, but he has to be kept in isolation. That's why for the past 6 years he hasn't been doing any work at all. He was kept separate from the other prisoners with only one thought constantly in his mind, that death was hanging over him. But then the highest court of India country gave a man who had already been sentenced to death twice a new lease on life. And along with sparing his life, the Supreme Court also made some strong remarks about the police investigation, the lower court, and even the high court, remarks that are worth hearing and remembering. So today, here is the story of a prisoner accused of not 1 or 2, but 6 murders. This story begins on May 9th, 2012, in a small village near Agra. In that village lived a family, the family of Gambhir Singh. He lived there along with his elder brother Satyabhan. On the night of May 9th, 2012, something horrifying happened. Satyabhan, his wife Pushpa, and their 4 children, all under the age of 12, 3 daughters and a son, were found dead inside their home. Their bodies bore deep wounds, inflicted with sharp-edged weapons. That night of May 8th or 9th, 2012, turned into a nightmare that shook the entire village. What was once a peaceful household was reduced to a crime scene of unimaginable brutality. Soon after, the police launched an investigation that would not only change the fate of one man, but also raise questions about the very system meant to deliver justice. The investigation was handed over to the police. As soon as the case reached their hands, the police arrived at the crime scene, sent the bodies for post-mortem, and began searching for eyewitnesses. It was then that Pushpa's brother came forward. He told the police that very same night, "We strongly suspect that this crime was committed by none other than Satyabhan's own younger brother, Gambhir Singh." When the police asked why he suspected Gambhir, Pushpa's brother explained that just some time earlier, the 2 brothers had quarreled over a piece of land. Gambhir had even threatened Satyabhan during the dispute. Following this lead, the police launched a manhunt. Within hours, Gambhir Singh was tracked down and arrested at a railway station about 10 kilometers away from the village. Along with Gambhir, his cousin Gayatri was also arrested on charges of helping him escape. The police then brought Gambhir back to the very house where the murders had taken place. Inside the house, they claimed to have recovered 2 weapons, a blood-stained axe and a dagger. They also seized Gambhir's clothes, which they said were soaked in blood. According to the police, Gambhir not only confessed to the crime but admitted that it was all because of the land dispute. On paper, it looked like an open and shut case, a family feud, a brutal massacre, a confession, and physical evidence. But what no one knew then was that this investigation would later be torn apart in the highest court of the land, exposing shocking flaws in how justice was delivered. According to the police, that Gambhir killed his own brother, sister-in-law, and their 4 children. For the police, the case seemed very simple. After all, 6 people had been murdered inside one house. Even calls came in from high official, pressuring them to solve the case quickly. A huge crowd had gathered in the village demanding answers, so the police also felt the killer has been caught, the case is solved. Within 24 hours, the entire case was wrapped up, and the police filed their charge sheet earlier than the scheduled time. After the charge sheet was filed, the trial began. The case reached the Agra Sessions Court, where it dragged on for nearly 5 years. 5 long years passed with witness testimonies, cross-examinations, and hearings. Finally, on March 20th, 2017, the Agra Sessions Court delivered its verdict. Gayatri, the cousin accused of helping Gambhir, was acquitted for lack of evidence. But the main accused, Gambhir Singh, was handed the death penalty. The judge declared that since Gambhir had killed his own brother, his sister-in-law, and their 4 innocent children, the crime fell into the rarest of rare category, deserving capital punishment. With that judgment, Gambhir's life changed overnight. Until then, he was just an under-trial prisoner, working inside the jail as a gardener, tending to plants as part of his prison duty. But the moment the death sentence was pronounced, he was stripped of his work, taken away from the other prisoners, and locked in complete isolation in central jail. From being a gardener inside the prison grounds, he was now a man counting every breath, waiting for the footsteps that might take him to the gallows. For Gambhir Singh, March 20th, 2017, became the day he was officially branded a murderer destined for the noose. Earlier, he could pass his time with the other prisoners, but now he was confined to a separate cell because he had been handed the death penalty. After the Sessions Court's verdict, Gambhir Singh challenged the decision in the Allahabad High Court. Since this was a death sentence, the state government also had to take the case to the High Court for confirmation, as required by law. The case reached the High Court, where it lingered for nearly 2 years. Finally, on January 9, 2019, the High Court delivered its judgment. The judges declared that the Sessions Court's decision was correct, that Gambhir Singh had indeed murdered 6 members of his own family, and they upheld the death penalty. Now, after 2 courts, the Sessions Court and the High Court had both sentenced him to the death. Gambhir Singh's fate seemed sealed. His death sentence was confirmed, and the rope of the hangman appeared inevitable. But there was still one last door open to him: the Supreme Court, the highest court of the country. With no money and no resources left, Gambhir Singh's only hope came in the form of a lawyer who stepped forward to fight his case. In 2019, the matter finally reached the Supreme Court. Hearings began slowly, one by one, as the years rolled on. What no one knew at that point was that the same system which had twice condemned him to death would one day pull him back from the death. Because the case involved the death penalty, a 3-judge bench of the Surami Court, the matter had reached the Supreme Court in 2019, and for 6 long years, hearings continued. Finally, on January 28, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered its verdict. In its judgment, the Supreme Court declared that the decision of the High Court was wrong. Gambhir Singh, it said, was innocent. There was no reliable evidence against him that could prove he was guilty of the 6 murders, let alone deserving of the harshest punishment, the death penalty. The Supreme Court went further. In its written judgment, it pointed out 4 specific reasons why the conviction could not stand. These 4 reasons not only exposed the weak foundation of the prosecution's case, but also highlighted the deeply flawed and careless manner in which the police had conducted the investigation. The judges remarked that this was not just about one case. If the police could mishandle an investigation of 6 brutal murders, 6 lives lost in one night, then it raises serious questions about the quality of police work in countless other cases across the country. What was once presented as an open and shut case unraveled completely in the highest court of the land. A man who had lived under the shadow of the noose for 12 years walked free, not because of mercy, but because the truth of the investigation finally came to light. The Supreme Court's ruling didn't just save Gambhir Singh's life, it also sent a strong message about how dangerous a careless investigation can be when justice itself is at stake. The police didn't even establish the basics, and the Supreme Court itself pointed it out. The court laid down, step by step, the 4 key reasons why Gambhir Singh was acquitted. The first reason. In any criminal trial, especially a murder case, one of the most important elements is the motive. What was the reason, the purpose, the cause that led to the killing? Because once the motive is established, the rest of the chain of evidence can be connected. This is something every police officer knows, every lawyer understands, and even a crime reporter can tell you that no murder happens without motive. Nobody just walks down the street, looks at someone and decides to kill them for no reason. There is always a motive behind such a brutal act. So what was the alleged motive in this case? The reason why, according to the police, Gambhir Singh would kill 6 members of his own family. The police story said that in 2010, the mother of Gambhir and his brother Satyaban had also been murdered, and after that killing, suspicion had fallen on none other than her 2 sons. The police tried to link this old family tragedy as the motive behind the 2012 massacre. They claimed that the tension between the brothers, born out of that earlier incident and fueled by a land dispute, was the reason Gambhir would go on to kill his brother, sister-in-law, and their 4 children. But the Supreme Court made it clear this so-called motive was weak, inconsistent, and never backed by solid evidence. And if the motive itself collapses, the entire case starts to crumble. And even back then, it was about land. That was the story the police told, that the 2 brothers killed their own mother over a land dispute. The police arrested both brothers, and they were sent to jail. Now, in a murder case, bail is rarely granted. But here's the surprising part. Within just a few months, the elder brother managed to get out of jail. Now think about it. If in the same murder case one brother can get bail, then logically the other brother should also get bail. But in this case, only the elder brother walked free while the younger one, Gambhir Singh, remained behind bars. To get bail, you need money. You have to arrange surety, deposit funds, and of course pay the lawyer. According to the police's version of events, the elder brother got out, but the younger brother, Gambhir, didn't have the money needed for his bail. So Gambhir asked his brother for help. Do one thing, sell a portion of my share of the land. Give me my cut of the money so I can pay the lawyer and complete the bail formalities. Then I can also come out. And as the police told it, the elder brother did exactly that. He sold a piece of the land and he handed over the money to Gambhir. After that, Gambhir Singh also came out on bail. But here's the twist. The land wasn't actually sold. Instead, his elder brother transferred it into his wife Pushpa's name. According to the police, this angered Gambhir. Their theory was, if the brother wanted to help, he could have simply given money from his pocket without pretending to sell the land. But instead, he cheated Gambhir by registering the land in his wife's name and then giving the money. In that rage, Gambhir killed his brother, sister-in-law, and their 4 children. So, in short, the police's motive was this. Gambhir needed money for bail. He asked his brother to sell his share of the land. The brother didn't sell it but transferred it to his wife's name and still gave Gambhir money. This, the police said, felt like betrayal to Gambhir, and in anger he committed the murders. But when this motive was presented before the Supreme Court, the judges said, "Fine, your story is interesting, but where is the proof? A motive cannot be accepted just because the police narrates a story. Show us evidence." And what evidence would have been required? Two things. Firstly, if the brother really sold the land to give Gambhir money, then there should be a registered sale deed, some proof of the sale. Secondly, if the land was not sold but instead transferred into Pushpa's name, then there should be official papers showing that the property was registered under her name. The police failed to produce either. There was no sale deed, no transfer papers, nothing to prove their theory. In fact, records showed that the land was never registered in Pushpa's name at all. So the Supreme Court asked, if the land was never transferred into Pushpa's name, then where does this supposed anger or betrayal come from? The motive collapses right there. This meant one thing. The police's motive was nothing more than a story, a theory they created to close the case quickly. The truth simply wasn't there. So the court said that the police had failed to establish the motive. They neither produced any land documents proving the property was transferred to Pushpa, nor did they show any financial records of money changing hands from a land sale. With no papers and no proof, the entire motive collapsed. Now comes the second reason. In almost every murder case, or in fact any crime, two key elements are considered. First, the motive, and second, the last seen witness, someone who saw the accused at or near the crime scene, whether it's a murderer, a thief, a dacoit. If someone saw the suspect at the place of crime, that becomes very strong evidence. So the question was, did the prosecution produce a last seen witness? And if yes, what did they testify? The Supreme Court went through the entire case record page by page, and what did it find? Not a single witness had seen Gambhir Singh on the night of May 8th or 9th, when the murders happened. Not one. This was shocking because the record itself showed that when the killings were discovered, an entire crowd from the village had gathered outside Satyabhan's house, Gambhir Singh's brother's house. Dozens of people were present, but still, not a single eyewitness came forward to say they saw Gambhir that night. The Supreme Court asked, how can we believe he was the killer if not one person saw him at the scene, even though a large crowd was right there? The police had no answer. And then came the bigger problem for the police. Their claim was, "Sir, he was running away after the murders, and we caught him within a few hours." The judges asked, "Where exactly did you arrest him?" The police answered, "From a railway station about 10 kilometers away from his village." The police's own charge sheets, and even in the furrow it was clearly mentioned, "We arrested the accused from railway station about 10 kilometers away from the crime scene." It was also written that when they caught him, the clothes he was wearing were soaked in blood, the same clothes in which he had allegedly committed 6 murders. After killing his brother, sister-in-law, and their 4 children with sharp-edged weapons like an axe and a dagger, he was supposedly trying to escape. The police said they had sent men to the bus stand and railway station after receiving information, and by coincidence, he was found at the railway station, where he was arrested. This was the police's main argument. There was no eyewitness at the crime scene, but since we caught him at the railway station, fleeing in blood-stained clothes, that itself proves he is the killer. But the Supreme Court raised some very sharp questions. The judges asked, "So, according to you, this man committed 6 brutal murders with sharp weapons. His shirt and pants were drenched in blood, and then he simply walked out of the house in those very same clothes. He traveled 10 kilometers to a railway station, stood there waiting, while hundreds of people must have passed by him, and not a single person noticed or reported it?" At this point, the lawyers representing the police were left speechless. The Supreme Court made it clear, such a story stretched logic beyond reason. No ordinary person could believe that a man dripping in blood could stand unnoticed in a crowded public place after committing such a massacre. The court said, How is it even possible that he showed no concern about being covered head to toe in blood? In every real murder case, the very first instinct of a killer is to get rid of the blood-stained clothes and destroy any evidence. No murderer casually roams around in blood-soaked clothes. That would only attract attention, even from people who might not have noticed otherwise. A killer always has fear inside him, fear of being caught. So how can we believe that this man walked nearly 10 kilometers, still drenched in blood, and then stood fearlessly at a railway station as if nothing had happened, until police conveniently arrived and arrested him? The Supreme Court's observation was blunt. This is impossible. That was the second major flaw. Doubt over the so-called last witness and the arrest itself. Now came the third and perhaps the most important point in any murder case: the weapon. With what was the crime committed? If someone was strangled, then what was the rope or cloth used? If shot, then where is the pistol? Where is the spent cartridge? Where is the bullet? If stabbed, then where is the knife? If hacked, then where is the axe or dagger? And yes, the police did present their own story about the weapon. The police said that after arresting Gambhir Singh at railway station, they brought him directly back to the crime scene, the house of Satyaban, where the 6 murders had taken place. There, they asked him, "Where is the weapon you used?" He supposedly replied, "I threw it in the adjoining room." In his presence, they claimed to have recovered 2 blood-stained weapons from that room, 1 axe and 1 dagger. They took these into custody. The Supreme Court then asked, "When did you send these weapons to the forensic lab?" The police admitted, 3 or 4 days later. The court pressed, "So where were the weapons during those 3 or 4 days?" The answer, "They were kept in the station's storeroom." But here's the problem. Were they sealed properly, wrapped in polythene, secured with a seal? No, they were just lying there, unsealed, handled even by police personnel. Still, eventually, they were sent to the forensic lab. And what did the forensic report say? It said that on both weapons, axe and dagger, multiple blood samples were found belonging to different blood groups. Now, yes, since 6 people had been killed, their blood would naturally be there, maybe even the killers. But the police never identified whose blood it was. They never tried to match the samples. They simply wrote, "These weapons had traces of several different blood groups." Not once did they try to confirm which blood belonged to the victims and which, if any, to the accused. The Supreme Court pointed out another huge flaw. For 4 days, you kept the weapons unsealed in the police station. In that time, manipulation was possible. The weapons could have been switched, tampered with, or even deliberately planted with fingerprints, since the accused was already in your custody. And then came the real shocker. When asked which weapon had actually been used in the murders, the police had no answer. Was it the axe? The dagger? Were all 6 victims killed with both weapons? Was one killed with the axe, others with the dagger? They had no explanation. The court noted that forensic science can easily differentiate. The cut marks of an axe are different from those of a dagger, a knife, or any sharp weapon. Even a bullet fired from a pistol has its own unique striations and markings. Yet, in this case, the police never established which weapon was actually used to kill which victim. Even that was unclear when asked, "Tell us, were some victims killed with the axe and others with the dagger? Were both weapons used or just one?" The police had no answer. They could not even establish which weapon was actually used in the murders. Think about how shocking this is. The most basic questions in a murder case are, what was the motive? Who was the last witness? And most importantly, which weapon was used? So that the evidence can be tied directly to the crime. This is why, many times, even when an accused confesses to murder, the police must still prove it with evidence. Because in court, a confession alone isn't enough. The killer might say, "Yes, I stabbed him," but then the law asks, where is the knife? Does it have his fingerprints? Does it carry bloodstains? Does DNA match the victim? Only when these things line up can a conviction stand. Otherwise, an accused can play games, confess in the police station, then deny everything in court, leaving the court scrambling without evidence. Here, the police didn't even bother to establish whether one or both weapons were used. Remember, this wasn't one murder, it was 6, yet they never clarified which weapon killed whom. The fourth major failure: every single piece of evidence, blood-stained clothes, weapons, samples lifted by the forensic team, was handled carelessly. Nothing was preserved properly. Evidence lay around unsecured, handled by anyone. The police themselves admitted they had no system, and in law, if there is even the slightest suspicion that evidence has been tampered with, or that it wasn't kept sealed and safe, then the accused gets the benefit of doubt. So, in this case, not a single piece of evidence was preserved properly. The Supreme Court commented bitterly, "All of this amounts to nothing more than a story the police told." Sadly, both the Sessions Court and later the High Court accepted these stories as truth and convicted the man. They didn't scrutinize the small but crucial details. They simply upheld the police version and maintained the death sentence. If either of those lower courts had examined the flaws, the case might never have reached the Supreme Court. But both the police and the courts failed, and this raises a larger question. How many other cases must there be where wrongful convictions happen? Sometimes the real killer walks free because the police never investigated properly. Throughout this entire case, Gambhir Singh kept saying he was innocent. He said he deeply loved his brother and sister-in-law. While in jail, he planted 10 saplings in their name. When he was finally released, he carried a letter saying, "I still fear that I might be falsely implicated again, or even killed by my brother's brother-in-law. That's why I need police protection." After 12 years in jail, when he was released, no one came to receive him. Probably because no relatives remained, and because who would want to be associated with a man accused of 6 murders, sentenced to death twice? People naturally ran away from him. Now the Supreme Court has acquitted him. He has a new chance at life. But can anyone truly start fresh when they've spent 12 years in prison for 6 murders they did not commit? For 12 years, he lived under 2 death sentences, awaiting execution. Now, suddenly, he's free. But will society accept him? Will he find work or dignity? In theory, yes, but in practice, it's extremely difficult. If the Supreme Court's verdict means Gambhir Singh truly is innocent, not just released on a benefit of doubt, but actually did not commit the murders, then who killed his elder brother and the 6 members of his family? If not Gambhir, then there is a real killer still out there, who fooled the law for 12 years and has been free all along. This is the black mark now on the police, a case of 6 murders, and yet the investigation was so careless, so sloppy, that the truth was never found. Will the police reopen the case to wash away this stain? Will they start a fresh investigation and, if someone else truly is guilty, finally bring that person to justice? If they do, justice may yet be restored. If not, the question will die unanswered forever. Who really killed those 6 people? So this was today's story. Thank you for joining us on this journey today. We hope you enjoyed the content and found it valuable.